Cankles McTaco Tits, whom we refer to as Kanks, the blowjob giving old queen that blares Phantom of the Opera from the White House while he is in a spiral over his involvement with a man named Bubba. And now we all know, per Mark Epstein's communication with Jeffrey Epstein, that Vladimir Putin has this information. We also believe that the Israeli government has this information. And, you know, he loves to talk about how good he is at taking tests. Like, I nailed my animal identification test. I even want to challenge AOC to take the same test. I was able to say giraffe, elephant, camel, and he wants to challenge AOC to do this. So he thinks he's so smart, and he thinks he is laser focused on this animal identification test. But we here at IHIP News, we're going to go ahead and give him a dementia test. And Kylie, our producer, looked up what are the 5 signs of dementia: memory loss, language problems, confusion, difficulty with familiar tasks, and delusion of grandeur. So let's start with the top one, memory loss. Kylie, play the clip.
I think you should take a cognitive test like I did. I took a cognitive test and I aced it. Dr. Ronnie Johnson, does everyone know Ronnie Johnson, congressman from Texas? He was the White House doctor. How good did Elise Stepanek do? You know, we've endorsed Dr. Oz. We've endorsed JP, right? JD Mandel, and he's doing great. Jimmy Connors is good. He's also happy.
Mike Bolton, John Bolton is here. Mike Bolton, as you know, is in Russia.
And there was progress today. I look forward to solving it.
Thank you, Steve.
It was Trump's fault. It's always Trump's fault. Can it ever be like Rick Gates's fault? I mean, it's always Trump's fault, Rick.
By the way, they never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley, you know, did you know they destroyed all of the information, all of the evidence, everything, deleted and destroyed all of it, because of lots of things like Nikki Haley.
Okay. So that, you know, that just is an all day, everyday occurrence with this man, getting the people that are closest to him, the biggest layups, getting it all wrong because he is in full blown dementia. And there is a mass cover up by the media, by the Supreme Court, by all of the dipshits that surround him. Fox News is the worst at covering up for this because we know they were on dementia watch out the wazoo with Joe Biden. Actually, they're still on. They're still on that watch because the more and more dripping that comes out of these Epstein files and the more Cankles deep Kank is in it, and the more we find out about his homosexual activities with Bubba, the more they go back to talking about Biden's dementia. So we know, Jesse, we know, Greg, we know that you guys can do it. But I think maybe they're a little bit too scared to start talking about blowjobs out of fear that they themselves might get excited. All right, moving along. Here we have a second stage diagnosis of second symptom for Kanks, and it is language problems and communication issues. Kylie, play the clip.
The state of California passed an outrageous law declaring their whole state to be a sanctuary.
In the failing New York Times by an anonymous, really an anonymous.
More Americans could receive heart, lung, and liver transplants when they gaze upon Yosemites, the men and women who selflessly enlist. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges they sacrifice every day for the furniture. To put defensive missiles to that beautiful Orion space capsule. Trump. Hurrah, MAGA. God bless the United States.
I mean, I think he has full-blown dementia, but I think, I'm not a physician, but I think there's like signs of a stroke. You know, he always has this and then the slurring of the speech. I mean, here at the end of the day, we have a senior citizen president, and he is showing all of these signs on top of, like, before he even got this old, he was already batshit crazy. I really genuinely think, you guys, you know how like old people, your grandparents or other old people, as they get closer to death, they start spilling the beans. So I just firmly believe that we're a year or two away, news cycles away from Kanks, because he loves to be in front of the camera all the time. He cannot stop. And nobody around him is going to say like, hey, I don't think you should be in front of the camera. Your dementia is really crazy. Nobody's going to say that to him. So I think we're not very far away where he's going to be like, I gave the best blowjob you could imagine. I really got down there and I sucked the chrome off that tailpipe. I guarantee you that is going to fucking happen, because this man is loose lips sister. All right, moving along. Here is a hyperclip of confusion, which is a telltale sign of dementia. Play the clip.
You have voter ID to buy a loaf of bread. The Democrats. Ooh, there was a mosquito. I don't want mosquitoes around me.
I'm a very stable genius. The disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection?
I tested positively toward negative, right?
I mean, you guys, this didn't even include the clip of when he was in Japan recently, and the prime minister of Japan is genuinely like has her hand on his back guiding him, and he still got lost. He still couldn't do it. So imagine this guy is in charge of the nuke codes. But I think in all sincerity, what's happening here is the sinister players, even more sinister than this guy is, because this guy's just an old narcissistic drag queen who's very laser focused on his ballroom, his presidential walk of fame, his Oval Office redo, and hanging out, talking to his friends, because he always is in the presence of all of these homosocial relationships. These dark actors behind him are like, yeah, let's just let this old queen do all this stuff, because then we can really, really tear up the United States government. And then lastly, here is evidence of the delusions of grandeur in which Kanks suffers from.
Nobody's better to people with disabilities than me.
Nobody has better toys than I do. Nobody loves the Bible more than I do.
Nobody's stronger than me.
There's nobody more pro-Israel than I am. There's nobody that understands the horror of nuclear better than me. There's nobody bigger or better at the military than I am.
There's nobody that's done so much for equality as I have.
There's nobody's ever had crowds like Trump has had.
There is nobody that respects women more than I do. Nobody in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump.
I mean, this guy, you guys, he doesn't know jack shit. Everything that he has done, he has been a failure at, with the exception of running for president. But as daunting as that is, and knowing that tens of millions of people voted for that and witnessed that type of dementia, confusion, arrogance, and delusions of grandeur, the truth is finally catching up with him. And once this man governs, he becomes painfully unpopular. There is actually devastating polling coming out for this entire movement, the MAGA cult. And this is from Gallup. And Americans show consensus on many democracy-related matters. Kylie, scroll down a little bit. Right here, Americans' widespread disagreement on democratic values. The question is, for each of the following pairs of statements, please indicate which comes closer to your view, even if neither is exactly right. Political leaders should compromise with the other party. 80% agree. As it pertains to political violence, it is never okay for people to use violence to achieve a political goal. 83% of Americans agree. As it pertains to multiculturalism, the U.S. is stronger as a nation because it has people from different races, religions, and cultures. 84%. 84% of Americans agree with this. And this is so important, because the enemy of what this fascist regime wants to do, which is a white Christian nationalist nation, the enemy to that is multiculturalism. In America, 84% of us agree with this. So that tells you the hardcore, hateful, Bible thumping, religious, MAGA supporting Christians, the worst, not the good Christians, these horrible megachurch Christians, 16% of them 16% of them are white supremacists. 84% of this country values and thinks we are stronger because of multiculturalism. And it gets really bad for the oligarchs here. Wealthy individuals and businesses should be limited in how much they can advance political candidates or causes they support. 83% of Americans agree, which can tell establishment Democrats and Democrats that are running right now that this is going to be a litmus test. If you're taking corporate money, you are not going to be able to advance in a Democratic candidacy. I just think we have to have candidates that are not beholden. And I don't just think that. 83% of the American public does. And then last, there's a massive consensus on there are facts and then there are opinions. 88% of Americans agree. So when we have this administration being consolidated by a bunch of extremists, either Zionist extremists or Christian nationalist extremists that want to propagandize to the public and divide us and tell us what we can think and say that woke is terrible because woke is the thought police. These few, they are the thought police because they want us to believe propaganda. And that polling from Gallup is absolutely devastating to the fascist regime and is an absolute victory for those of us that cherish and want to live in a democracy where we can critically think, control our own thoughts, and not be ruled by a bunch of religious fanatics, whether they be extreme Zionists or extreme Christians. They all have the same desired intention, which is to control your thoughts and stop you from critically thinking so that they can hold all the money and all the power, and it's total bullshit. All right, do me a favor, support our show by buying our book. It's called Life is a Lazy Susan of Shit Sandwiches. It's a great little stocking stuffer. And subscribe to this channel, like this post, leave a little comment to feed the algorithm, and we'll be back later with more news.